even though this practice that I have often is me on my own, I never feel like I am on my own. I always feel like I'm engaging with something else. If it's not another person, then I'm engaging with something. And that something is always present even in groups, even with another person. And that's what really interests me about what I do is that by being creative, by using my body, using drawing and making things, that it brings something to life that might not normally be visible, or that might have been unsaid, or that needs to be said. Things that might be pushed away culturally. So I never know what's really going to happen when I start any of the practices that I'm going to do, and that's what really interests me as well, engages me, is this feeling of excitement about stepping into unknown territory. And feeling part of that process of something unfolding, something growing, becoming more concrete, not concrete, but more visible. I do like working with other people though. It's more tangible, that experience of co-creating or co-manifesting something. So people who take part are anybody who's interested in using their bodies to explore what's happening for them, what's happening for us as people in this culture, in this society. Taking an inward look at what's important rather than always seeing from the outside. And allowing what's moving in us and what's moving through us to be more at the forefront of what's happening. Sometimes I work with just one other individual, and people might come to me for various reasons. Sometimes it's because they have a back problem or a specific issue physically, and it may start off as we engage with moving in a particular formulated way, like a set of structured exercises. And if the person is open to letting go of some of that structure and finding what other movement lies within their bodies or what other possibilities there are, then that can unfold into something more interesting, something that we might not have expected to happen, that allows them to move differently, to move outside of their habitual patterning and conditioning. And my role in that is it's mainly as a witness, to be there to observe without any judgment, to hold the space in a way that creates an atmosphere where they feel they can trust themselves and what's arising, and to sense that inner feeling of intuition or imagination or whatever it is for that person, and to give voice to that. And sometimes what people are doing is they start in a group, and we hold a big group session, and they may move independently of each other initially, and then together sometimes it's a conscious choice. I see people moving together, and they choose to move together, and sometimes they're moving together, but they're not aware they're moving together. And within those group scenarios, I often provide people with things to make with. Sometimes it's twigs and leaves and flowers or whatever it is I can find lying around the garden. I bring those inside and I offer people the option to create something. And in one particular instant, the last group gathering that I had, people had this opportunity to make something, and it started off as individual little pockets of creations around the room, and someone, without me instigating it, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about how can I facilitate this to move into a group creation. I didn't have to say anything, and someone started doing something where this was happening in the middle of the room. Things were being brought to the middle of the room. Other people were starting to join in with this. There was moving, dancing, people were drawing, people were bringing things and putting them together in particular ways. And it just happened itself. And this thing grew in the middle of the room without any instruction or any decision making. And then we stood back and looked at the end and we spoke about what we all saw. And there was something very alive in people when they were talking about what they saw and what they had created, and this fascination with how something can arise out of nothing. How rich and deep this image was for people. Almost appeared alive to some people. I think that's one of the moments that make what I do so exciting and joyful for me is when that happens. But I also find it terrifying that it might not happen, and I have this responsibility to make it happen. So I'm always challenged in trusting the process of what's happening right now. And I think that leads me to the thoughts of the political aspect of this, is that trusting ourselves is so important, and that we're kind of constantly fed information about not trusting ourselves. Let someone else take charge, let someone else diagnose you, let someone else tell you how to do something, let someone else decide what's best for you, where actually we have this choice to look inward and learn from body signals, intuition, desires, longings, callings. All of these things are there for a reason. They're there to guide us through our lives. And I'm not suggesting for one moment that I can cure myself of an illness without any help from a doctor, but I'm pretty sure a lot of illnesses could be avoided if people were allowed to if people had an opportunity to spend more time being true to what they need. So a big role for me in working with people who may not have the experience of being creative openly or outwardly in their lives, or moving or dancing, is to bring that possibility. It's to create the space for that to happen. And I'm doing that in small ways, I think, where I am right now in Stoke. I do monthly groups, I do smaller groups, I work within university settings with young people who are just at the start of their creative careers. and my own as well. And my own individual sense of how this manifests for me is through my own physical self as a woman, my feminine sense of physical body. And that's led me down the track of exploring a particular kind of tantra, which is called Sakta Tantra, which honours the divine feminine. And I think everything I've been talking about is an example of that anyway. I'm not sure whether I need to call it feminine but that feels right to me to call it that, and it's not to say there's anything not good about masculine, it's just we've lived in a patriarchal dominated culture for a long time, and there needs to be a balance rather than it be one or the other, I think. And part of what I'm learning for myself is that my balance between those two things was not particularly good. And there are lots of other women who experience the same sense of imbalance between allowing themselves to be more in touch with the feminine attributes or their feminine bodily processes. So that's this quiet kind of under the surface, coming to the surface awareness of importance of these things, whether they're cyclical things, menstrual things, to do with childbirth and pregnancy. All of these aspects are a part of that. And I'm very interested in how that affects men, but it's not something I know so much about. For me, it feels like there's something about allowing the feminine to become more prominent in our society again, and then it can serve a purpose, a holding purpose. It's taken me a long time to come to this point in my life, and it probably has something to do with being midlife-ish, nearly. After all the doing and trying to be a certain shape and trying to look a certain way, and the pressure of all of that, being able to let that go, but through first of all finding somatic movement education, even letting go of ridiculously hard yoga practices, towards finding a more real, more a more feminine, a more bodily felt, intuitive practice that's in keeping with a tantric way of approaching moving in yoga. I've let go of many things in the last 3 or 4 years in order for this new thing to be to have space. And I think it's quite hard for people to let go of doing and having to try harder and always pushing for the next thing, always on the rise. So there's this other aspect to life, which is the going down part, the other half of the circle of the great round. We can't always keep striving. We're just going to, destroy ourselves if we do. Our nervous system even needs that balance of resting, inward reflection. think there's a growing network of people who are interested in that way of being. I suppose it's got its roots in more Eastern practices of allowing. But I often feel like when I think of these things and these more gentle approaches to life, there is a balance to be had, and the balance is definitely swinging towards the kind of things that I've left behind. There are other people out there, not as witnesses as such, that are watching what I'm doing, but that are curious, maybe. And as I see the word opponent, I start thinking about, I think I'm my own opponent sometimes, my own judgmental thoughts that creep in from time to time, an inner critic, or that voice that might be self-doubting is how I recognise that. And I think through this process of what I do, I'm slowly learning about these things as part of who I am, but part of the tapestry of the whole process, that they're not to be ignored. They're things that can be explored or made friends with, or maybe put to one side for a moment. And they're also the same things that cause other people fear or self-doubt. I often find myself discovering something, thinking I'm discovering something, and then I'll read somewhere that someone else has been working in this particular way for a long time already, and that feels like a supportive network of affirmation. Part of what drew me towards this work was I was fed up learning techniques and styles and ways of doing what I do. I feel like I've learned so many disciplines, and they were great. They're great things to have, but I wanted to know where I am in that. What is it I can do? What is it that's specific to me? What can I create? I don't want to just learn someone else's dialogue, someone else's way of teaching, someone else's rules about teaching or creating. And that's what began my process of doing a master's. And I come to the end of that process, and I sometimes feel a bit lost, that I don't really know what to do, which is kind of ironic, that I have this freedom. I have freed myself from all those rules and other people's theories. And now the job for me is to actually just get out there and do it and put it into practice and allow my own style to evolve as another strand of how this process works. I don't think it ever does end. There is no end. It's just life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth. It goes on, it goes on. I think after a session, people comment that they feel more alive, they feel different, something has shifted within them. Even if it's just for a small while. I always feel more alive, more in tune with whatever that energy is that moves through all of us and moves all of us.
You know, every now and then, I think you might like to hear something from us. Nice and easy. But there's just one thing. You see, we never, ever do nothing nice, easy. We always do it nice and rough. But we're going to take the beginning of this song and do it easy. But then we're going to do the finish rough. It's the way we do Proud Mary. And we're rolling, rolling, rolling on the river. Listen to the story. Left a good job in the city, working for the man